If you struggle with food, there's a good chance you're doing at least a few of those things. Things that seem normal, things that even feel responsible, but that quietly keep the binge-restrict cycle alive. In this video, I'm sharing 7 things I stopped doing that completely changed my relationship with food. And chances are, at least one of them is happening in your life right now without you even realizing it. So make sure you will stay to the end, because the last one is the one most high-achieving women don't realize they're doing. If you're new here, hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a certified holistic health coach, and I'm also currently studying for a master's in nutrition and integrative health. And I work primarily with women who feel stuck in emotional eating, binge-restrict cycles, and that frustrating pattern of starting over again and again. On this channel, we talk about the deeper layers behind those patterns, the nervous system, hormones, mindset, and the identity shifts that actually create sustainable change. Because healing your relationship with food is rarely just about learning more about nutrition. It's about unlearning patterns that have been reinforced for years. For a long time, I thought healing my relationship with food meant doing more discipline, more structure, more control, more rules, more tracking, more willpower. I thought that if I could just find the right system, the right plan, and the right level of discipline, everything would finally click. And for a few days, sometimes even a few weeks, it did feel like it worked, but eventually something would always happen. Stress would increase, life would get busy, emotions would catch up with me, and suddenly the system would fall apart again. And every time it did, I would interpret that as a personal failure, like I was the problem, like I just needed to try harder. But the truth is, the biggest shifts in my relationship with food didn't come from adding more things. They came from stopping certain patterns that were quietly keeping the cycle alive. Patterns that look normal, patterns that diet culture often encourages, patterns that even feel responsible or disciplined. But actually, those patterns were reinforcing stress, restriction, and self-doubt. So with all that being said, let's start with the first one. Number 1, I stopped starting over every Monday. For years, my relationship with food followed a very predictable rhythm. Maybe you know it too. Something happens during the week. Stress builds, you skip meals, you're exhausted, maybe you overeat on an evening, maybe the weekend gets messy with binges and all, and suddenly Sunday night arrives with the familiar feeling, that mix of guilt, discomfort, and urgency, and the promise appears. Okay, Monday will be different. I will start again, I will get back on track, and all of that. So Monday becomes this symbolic reset, the day you're going to do everything right again. Eat clean, stick to the plan, be disciplined. And for a few days it works. You feel in control again. But the problem with this cycle is that it trains your brain to believe something very dangerous. That mistakes mean you have to start over, instead of learning how to continue imperfectly. When the nervous system learns that imperfection leads to punishment or resets, food becomes high pressure, and high pressure increases stress. Stress increases cortisol, and cortisol destabilizes appetite and cravings, which means the very system that is supposedly designed to fix the problem is actually reinforcing it. So what finally started shifting things for me was letting go of that reset mentality. Instead of asking, how do I undo this? I started asking, how do I support myself now? Sometimes that meant eating normally after overeating instead of restriction. Sometimes it meant going for a walk instead of punishing exercises. Sometimes it meant simply accepting that one messy meal didn't require a new identity, a new reset. And when you remove the pressure to constantly restart, something surprising happens. Food becomes less dramatic, less loaded, less emotional. And that quiets the cycle more than discipline ever could. Number 2, I stopped restricting after overeating. This is one of the most common patterns in the binge-restrict cycle. You overeat, you feel physically uncomfortable, you feel frustrated with yourself, and your brain jumps to the logical solution. Compensate, skip breakfast, eat less tomorrow, be stricter, work out harder, try to balance it out. On the surface, this feels responsible, but physiologically, it backfires. When the body experiences restrictions, especially after overeating, it perceives instability. Blood sugar becomes more volatile, hunger hormones increase, the brain becomes much more focused on food, and the likelihood of another binge increases dramatically alongside it. So the cycle continues. You overeat, restrict, crave, and overeat again. Breaking this pattern requires something that feels incredibly uncomfortable at first: consistency. And even when you feel like you don't deserve it. So instead of skipping meals after overeating, I started eating regular meals again: breakfast, lunch, dinner, just enough food without punishment. And at first, it did feel wrong, like I was letting myself get away with overeating. But over time, something shifted. My nervous system stopped expecting restriction. Food stopped feeling scarce. And when the body trusts that nourishment will continue, the urgency and then constant chatter around food begins to decrease. Number 3, I stopped treating food like a moral decision. For a long time, food carried moral weight in my mind. Eating a salad meant I was disciplined. Eating chocolate meant I lacked control. Healthy foods meant I was good. Unhealthy foods meant that I failed. This way of thinking is incredibly common, but it turns eating into a constant evaluation of your character. Every meal becomes kind of like a test, and when something becomes a test, pressure increases. Pressure activates the nervous system seeks relief, and often that relief appears in the form of the very foods you're trying to avoid. When I started seeing food as neutral or like neutral information, neutral whatever, rather than a moral decision, the emotional charge around eating changed dramatically. Some foods support energy better. Some foods are more for pleasure. Some foods are convenient. None of them determine your worth. And when food stops being a measure of your character, it becomes much easier to make choices calmly instead of reactively. Number 4, I stopped ignoring my emotions during the day. And I have to say, that was a big one for me. This changed a lot. And it's one thing I see often when high-achieving women are incredibly able to function. You know, they show up, they handle responsibility, they keep moving, but emotions often get pushed aside in the process. During the day, you're busy, focused, productive, but when the evening comes and everything slows down, the nervous system finally downshifts as well. That's when unprocessed emotions appear: stress, loneliness, fatigue, overwhelm. Food becomes the easiest regulator for those emotions. Sugar increases dopamine, carbohydrates increase serotonin, eating provides comfort and distraction. But the pattern isn't really about food, it's about emotional processing. When I started giving myself small windows to process emotions earlier in the day, nighttime eating changed significantly. Sometimes in the day, eating changed significantly. So that processing meant sometimes it was journaling or going outside without my phone or simply naming how I actually felt. So simply put, giving emotions space earlier in the day reduces the need for food to carry them later. Number 5, I stopped believing I was broken around food. This belief sits quietly underneath many who struggle with eating. I just can't be trusted around food, I have no self-control, other people can handle this, but I cannot. Once that belief forms, every binge becomes proof. And the tighter you try to control food, the stronger the rebound becomes. But eventually I realized something important. The behavior wasn't proof I was broken, it was proof that my body had been under pressure for a very long time. Pressure from dieting, from rules, from shame, from the guilt, from the overeating, from believing that every mistake meant something about my character. And when that pressure started easing, the behavior started changing too. Like not overnight, but gradually. Because your relationship with food is shaped by the environment you create around it. And when the environment becomes calmer and safer, your body responds. Next up, I stopped trying to earn my food. This point is closely linked to number 2 about stopping to restrict after overeating, but it's pretty much the other way around. For a long time, I had this subtle rule in the back of my mind that food had to be earned. If I worked out, I could eat more. If I had been good all day, I could have something sweet. If I overate, I needed to compensate. Maybe through a longer workout or eating less the next day or trying to be extra disciplined in general. And I didn't always say it out loud, but underneath it all was the belief that food was something I had to deserve, that eating normally required justification. But this mindset quietly keeps your nervous system in a constant state of pressure. Because when food is something you have to earn, your body learns that nourishment is conditional, and conditional nourishment creates stress. From a physiological perspective, this matters more than most people realize. When your body repeatedly experiences cycles of restriction, compensation, and intense exercise tied to food intake, it starts to anticipate scarcity. Scarcity increases the food focus, as we learned. It increases the cravings, the likelihood of overeating later, of binges and all of that. Because your brain is wired to protect you from a famine. And when food is not always available, or when your brain thinks it's not available, all it does is make you focus on food to survive technically, because the brain doesn't know that food is actually all around you. So the more food feels conditional, the more urgently your body seeks it. When I stopped treating food like something that had to be earned, something shifted. Instead of thinking, did I deserve this today? The question became, what does my body actually need right now? Sometimes that meant a nourishing meal or something comforting, or sometimes it meant eating even when part of me felt like it shouldn't. But the more consistent that nourishment became, the quieter the urgency around food got. Because when your body trusts that food is available, it stops trying to grab it whenever it can. Now lastly, I stopped waiting to feel in control. This one took me a long time to understand. For years, I believed that I needed to feel in control before I could eat normally. I thought discipline had to come first, that one day I want to wake up feeling motivated, clear, and completely in charge of my habits. And that would be the moment that everything changed. But that moment never really arrived, because the truth is, control doesn't come before consistency. It comes from it. When your nervous system is dysregulated, food often becomes chaotic. Not because you lack discipline, but because your system is trying to stabilize itself. Stress affects appetite hormones. Fatigue affects impulse control. Emotions affect decision-making. So waiting until you feel completely in control before you change your behavior is like waiting for calm water before you learn how to swim. It sounds logical, but it keeps you stuck. What finally helped me was realizing that feeling in control wasn't the starting point, it was the result. The more I practiced responding to my body calmly, even when I didn't feel perfectly disciplined, the more stability started to appear. Eating regular meals when I felt messy, choosing consistency over perfection. Those small actions slowly rebuilt something that had been missing for a long time: trust. And once trust started growing, the chaos around food began to soften. It's not like I suddenly became perfectly disciplined from one day to the next. It was because my nervous system no longer felt like it had to fight me all the time. So today, looking back, none of these shifts were dramatic. They were subtle changes in how I responded to moments that used to trigger the cycle. Stopping the reset, stopping the compensation, stopping the moral judgment, allowing emotions, questioning the belief that I was broken. And over time, those shifts created something that used to feel impossible. Calm around food, not perfect eating, not flawless discipline, just like calm. And that calm is what allows consistency to grow naturally. So if this video resonated and you're realizing your relationship with food might be shaped by deeper patterns, I created a free quiz that can help you understand those patterns more clearly. It's called What Type of Emotional Eater Are You? It helps you identify what drives your overeating, why certain moments feel harder than others, and where your nervous system might be looking for support. You can take it in just a few minutes. The link is down in the description below. And if this video helped you see your patterns differently, make sure to hit the like, subscribe, and the notification bell so you don't miss future videos. And I'd love to know in the comments which of these patterns felt most familiar. Remember, you're not broken. You've just been trying to change the behavior without addressing the patterns underneath it. And that is exactly what we're doing here. So lots of love, and hopefully until next time.